How do you like long videos? Nothing does I upload a video that you are loving, and a new format that is the best team of every 5 stars in Genshin Impact. And one of the most repeated comments is which is the best team of every 4 stars. Genshin Impact, since usually the 4 stars are minimally more accessible than the 5 stars and many. Sometimes we have characters there without going up that we are curious about how they might have their full potential despite the fact that in some lists they can and are quite low. So today you're going to see the best team of every 4 stars in Genshin Impact. Not just 4. Know what is the highest potential of each of them, but even for if in any of them, you have free time and curiosity and you want to get the most out of it. To any 4 stars, however little you consider, here you will have the opportunity to find that team that's going to make that 4 stars look like they're really shining. So that you can not only have fun, but perhaps even surprise yourselves. So leave a good like, a good also thanks, subscribe, leave a good comment for the algorithm. Thanks for enjoying and watching via the channel. Thanks for you, love and support. Welcome and invite the directs if you're eating that I take advantage of. It doesn't cost you anything, it's totally free. I recommend and position the video so you know, like, subscribe with bell and comment for algorithm, and remember, already active the blessing draws on the channel 1 a day. To participate you just have to leave a good like, subscribe with bell, and leave a comment that is not written with I. That there's already a wave of people who say hello comment to Bendy that it's not written. With AI hell, Phil. As you knew I was putting that, let's see the best teams. Just like in the previous video with a variant so you don't say A, just that. Team. I don't have that character and I'll always give variants of each of the teams in every 4. Genshin Impact stars of every 4 stars. Let's get started, Lisa. I have here obviously the whole 4-star character list, Lisa. I hope the video isn't too long. Lisa basically is an Electro sub DPS with a slightly small damage area, and which also has a constellation, which reduces the defense of enemies with which they will receive more harm than you do. Lisa can mainly get her full potential in 2 teams, her maximum team. Whoever wants to take her to heaven, I recommend you to put Lisa triple mastery and play her like some kind of hyper bloom carry, giving Vasiquitos that exploit the seeds and carry it with double Hydro, but not with Furina but Xingqiu and Anne for the damage of the double Hydro plus the defensive contribution. And finally a Nahida would be what you would recommend, a very risky team, but if you play Lisa, Xingqiu and Nahida are going to see some amazing results, and you're going to think Lisa is so hot. Although it has its limitations, and as an alternative, I would tell you that Lisa does her job as well as an Eula sub DPS in case you don't take Raiden with Eula, who likes Eula and wears an Eula. Lisa Furina C2L, Mika chimes and activates you either passive and other or in aggravate equipment or Spreed, and as she is an Electro sub DPS for a carry Dendro that can be Kinnick in aggravate. That is not the best thing for the character or Algaiza Mitignari aggravate. Pure though, Algaiza Mitignari have a better relationship with Hyper Bloom teams and Kuki. This is really Lisa's potential. Next, Barbara. Barbara has 2 main niches and that. One is the normal bloom teams, in which normally who has Kokomi uses Kokomi without low, but if you don't use Kokomi you don't want to take it out just for one team or you have it on another team. Barbara is an amazing character for bloom teams as well, where you take her with the Book of the Sacrifice to reset the elemental that gives you a Hydro Halo around that if you're going to melee. Apply to enemies and gives Hydro basics also apart from the loaded ones and others, and can carry, in addition, the instructor set that will break the mastery of the team to do more damage in bloom teams. And as Barbara's second alternative, this is going to be very curious, and is that Barbara can carry the catalyst of sacrifices that resets its elemental and gives you that perma hollow of Hydro. And this, you can take advantage of Electro's melee as Sino for example, and if you don't have exaggerated Hydros to play because you're new, but you have Sino, there's a very curious team of Sino Barbara that can carry both the Sacrifice and the Dragon Hunter, but I recommend the Sacrifice more, because it resets its elemental and you have this score around and wets the enemies and activates the Sacrifice with the 3 bubbles Barbara has around, and also the instructor set for mastery, and you can play a kind of strange Sino Hyper Bloom with Barbara. I recommend that you take some Sino, Nahida, Barbara, and last, either a Zhongli or another Dendro. Kaya is a cryo. Kaya, I told you. in the tier list that really today is a worse Rosaria literally with which Kaya. And Rosaria, who is later, will do a very similar function, and is that currently. Better teams would hypothetically be the permafrost in case they could be played, but how you can't really play Rosaria and Kaya have a very good team of reverse melts. That is to say, the inverse melted cabbage that I explained to you from Bennett, Xiangling, and then 2 cryos that I always mention that you can combine almost any cryo you want because Shenhe with Xianyun, Rosaria, Kaya, because then they would enter very well both Kaya and Rosaria, like Xianyun that I will then repeat but to each of them. Then I will tell you other teams apart, which are very good, but Kaya mainly if you could play Permafrost. Any core around him is first. Second cryo Afwand, Kaya, Furina, Xianyun, Xiangye, everything. Focused on Kaya doing a lot of damage, or Kaya as sub DPS that we could play, for example, Weasley, Furina, Xianyun, Azo and Kaya as sub DPS. And for the older ones, for example, Ayaka Kokomi, Katsuha and Kaya as sub DPS of Ayaka there. We have all the combinations and the inverse melts. Razoa has his Thunder Fury team that you have heard me talk a lot of him, who is basically Razor triple mastery with a lot of recharge doing double reaction. Both crackling and hyper bloom, because with his ulti with the wolf you know it hits electro, and crack it can hit pyro with B and Shix. The team is Razor, Xingqiu, Nahida and Bennett, and I have seen people try to play this team with maybe other hydros, but I don't recommend it because Xingqiu gives you an extra defensive input, and in addition Xingqiu applies enough for you to maximize the amount of blooms generated in field to exploit both the hyper blooms and the crackling. Zorazor Thunder Fury. And as an alternative, we could try to play some physical Razor with Furina C2, Mika CT and some additional sub DPS Krivo, as could be, since Ganyu Shenhe. Or something outside the field that would apply a lot of Krivo for Razor to make superconductor, but this already. Amber. To see Amber has it complicated, but Amber basically in. Directly we've been testing and images will be around thanks to editors of an Amber doing 250,000 years with the male Bonnie has a curious team that can pass the wings of the abyss. That is Amber Bennett, a breed to apply that can be perfectly Diona that gives you a Mastos Bufo and apply Krivo with the ulti out of the field, and a Sucrose that can put the shadow green to Pyro to do more damage, but then with the ulti imbues the Krivo with Diona, so that you can reapply the Krivo with that ulti of Sucrose, and this team of full 4 stars plus Amber allows you to remove abysmal damage, so recommended. Can be a kind of support if you build it with choice of the end and set of nobility or instructor. As sub-DPS of Hu Tao, and you can play a Hu Tao with a Hydro like Xingqiu Yelenon, an Anemo like Katsuya mainly or Sucrose, or a lot of things, and Amber last character as second. Pyro to contribute these buffos both from the instructor set bar the nobility set one of the two, and the bufo of the end chooses Hu Tao besides throwing the male Bani and the ulti to apply Pyro, so that the Anemo Katsuya mainly or Sucrose then put the buffos, the green shadow and the buffos, extra good elementary year etc. to Pyro. Then Amber has 2 quite decent teams. Xiangling. Here we imagine half video talking about Xiangling. If we are going to beat team's goal, from top to bottom, the strongest team today where it appears is Kinnicha's team. Yes, friends, we know that exists the national radon, we know that exists the internationals, know that there are some Xiangling variants, even Monopyros, but the reality is that today, and to surprise, and we already know that every time we mention Xiangling of Wika has to appear out there. Wildly, this current Xiangling team with the most damage by rotation with a little bit of, but you know there's a limit of up to Gun and C2 in the character's Bennett's team. Xiangling with Forest Memory set to lower resistances inside for Kinnich to make. If you already go further, Kinnish CT2 and Weapon gives us the current team of tier list that can improve even more the future with Mavuika, but apart from that team with Xiangling I mentioned in Orifica already. You know it, 2 variants very used, the Radon National, surely you play it if you use it to the sky, and that moreover the National Raiden will have buffos you already know, and the 5.2 starts the Electro-Hutched Billows unload that surely on the first day would be testing them to see how much I better these teams and international cakes, as well as mentioned in Orifica by Baido. His Electro Sub DPS gives us mitigations as Shinkyu, gives us a shield and gives us some dragons. Activate with normals and load this when being Electro. It does not activate well the Hyper Blooms unlike Smooth or Cookie and other characters, but it does work very well with Nouvillette, so Bayot. Going on his best team today is the Nouvillette team, a Nouvillette Furina Bayadu and last all. You can put in a Xianyon or some character who gives us Gilin and compensates us for Furina's burdens. So Baidu's best current team is with Nouvillette, some second team from Baidu, to get out. A very high damage because we could try to operate some kind of Electro Monkey, but not with Raiden, because Baidu, you know that it is not activated with Raiden, but a kind of Bayadu. Some carry that activates the basics like Chlorind. Some Sarah Chicks and one Sarah Chi6, Baidu Chlorind Oral. An Agrave team where the character in the field does make many attacks. That practically the team where really gets a very top damage is really the new one. Bile, then, as an Electro that does not activate their problems, can be adapted for equipment of Agravita or for general Electro equipment loaded without the same thing as if Anglin is. It's an SUV has so many teams that it's complicated, but Beam targets the teams with greater damage by current rotation and without that they are from top to bottom of the tier. We know that without that is not activated with Nouvillette, with which the second strongest team in the game is that of Arlecchino, with which for without an Arlecchino without Ukazuha Bennett is the team with the greatest damage by rotation of without that, and then if we keep going down without not seeing well with Quinnich, with Z much better and the Anifurina. So the next best team with more damage per rotation of without, which is very possibly the Hyperbrunn, any variant of Hyperbrunn Kuki Triple Mastery without. That and some inside as it might be to Gizam or reverse variant of, for example, or Chlorind or otherwise, without a Gitaba and its IE Hyperbrunn in general, the highest ceilings of Hyperbrunn with all constellations of Archontes without there being like Hydro would be one of the best alternatives Ningguan and Dei. I like it here because we started character teams that practically no one uses Ningguan. Bennett, Furina, Siti Tuchilonen, and Ningguan's current Shaw would be an amazing team that in fact. There is down here because the person on the channel who is called Nacho Agruting. Thank you Nacho for letting us try this. It turns out that he likes Ningguan and has it very well built and told us. Look Phil, test this team I noticed. And a content streamed obviously the damage of this team wasn't the own Ningguan was all the supports. But it's objectively the best team. So prove it to whoever likes it Ningguan that it's the same core of Navia that's Ningguan. Silonen, Furina, and Bennett Official know that mainly today their two best variants of equipment are Agravites and Electrocharged, although Auroron comes here to rival it. Electrocharged, but if we want to talk about roofs and better equipment, then Fischl with Nouvillette the same. That Baidu in Electrocharged has therefore the highest roof of Fischl, and speaking of Agravites, I highly recommend trying with Shilonen, the pure Agrates of Chlorind or Keixing who likes the carries electro rotation of 15 seconds, Chlorind in Ahida, Fischl and Silonen. Highly recommended that Dick team and you will love Hyperloom. Will always have more roofs and more damage than Agraves, because you're missing a very strong reaction and combining the reaction so much from the bowl. Upalume as from this reaction of Agrave or Spreed, but for whatever reason if you lack Hydros, these teams are still very powerful next Bennett. Bennett happens to you as if online without. Q could put half video of Bennett, so let's talk quickly about target look. The top-down team pulls table, and the two best teams currently from Bennett are Arlecchino Gamink and also Orifice mention also to Kinnick. Kinnick has substance slot also with Bennett, Gamink. You can overcome if we also talk about C2 and very crazy weapons and ceilings. Third best team of the game and Arlecchino along with Bennett. The three currently strongest teams of Bennett, plus the other 800 Bennett teams that I'm not telling you will tell me. Fire mini, I'm speaking of the best of every 4 stars then. I wear the criterion, Noel is the Fei. Zamikor I've told you about Ningguang Noel, Shilonen, Furina Bennett. But as Noel in the field, Kancure allows us to play 3 Geos, and only Furina since Furina low life, but Noel compensates. Because it's healer then we could play a Noel. Garu Shix in here last since an Albedo. A Yunjin, or even if your Silonen is C2 that would activate the buff to the Geo, while being triple Geo. Noel is current one who likes Noel. Main Noah's, there's your team. Shongyun. We advanced since I talked about the inverse melts of two cryos with Xiaoling and Bennett, but in Shongyun specifically I can make an exception and tell you about the first national. The oldest, the primordial, the one that came out on the one and was baptized like this, and that's where all the variants of national teams that are those of Bennett, Xiaoling, Xingqiu making reactions as Raiden National, the International of Tatagia as Shongyun, was the father of all this together. Xingqiu and Bennett, so Shongyun has a very strong team that is Shongyun Xingqiu Jinglin. And Bennett, I've talked about this in other videos and apart because the inverse melt Diona, he's got two teams. I'm going to surprise you pretty much apart from some that I've already talked about, but basically, they're like she's a 20-second cryo heater because her permafrost best would be with Ayaka. And Ayaka Furina Kazuha Diona, the Diona heals a little bit and compensates us Furina, and you have the V. Diona's best permafrost and surprise aside has a full 4 gaming free-to-play variant. Very powerful gaming stars making melted something complicated to play because you don't have to assimilate the descendings to the cooldown if you don't have to wait a little while in each descending too. Rosaria full 4 stars is a full 4-star team quite free to play without constellations of characters practically. Although Diona She6, who is not mastering, will help. Pretty much that's gonna surprise you, and obviously this too. I'll talk to Rosaria later like this. That Diona melts inverse free to play from gaming, not melted, pure gaming forgiveness, and there. Permafrost of Jaka Sucrose is a kind of Kazuha but Bufa mastery in time of the good elementary year, with which for example for nobility or something to mastery, but she has her famous Sucrose Taser, which is an electrocharge team where Sucrose is a carry in the field and is also very free to play. This team is full 4 stars and the Sucrose. It is a team of electrocharged will be benefited from Oron then perhaps? Sucrose Baidu, Xingqiu. If you want defensive and final input instead of official, let us know. Auroron can be quite interesting and I recommend you to play whoever likes it very Sucrose. And then Sucrose is sub DPS on teams where Kazuha is and you want mastery and you don't care about the V. Good elementary year is to say nobility no, but Alikino. For example, we could talk about that. A Sucrose ceiling like 4 stars could be an Alikino Furina C2 Sucrose, and Bennett? Although the Sucrose mastery would snort more for Furina, making more melted inverse forgiveness. Reverse vaporized at Alikino vaporizing 1 in 3 normal, but Sucrose that goes. You know, it's a sub DPS. Physical that makes a very large nook of a physical damage that has a pyro shield, and that does not combine with nothing, but the reality is that we could play 2 teams focused on doing a lot of damage with their Ulti Nuka and Donna would simply be a team where we literally boopimos damage and let's just give damage inflicted, with which we could play a Raiden Furina C2 Mecha Seek and Shingen. Here we can play infinite variants by replacing one of these 3 characters that buff on the damage. They fuck for a Bennett 2 to blow the attack. If you see it, they look like a lot of physical equipment. Oila, is that in Shingen weird buffando because that nook of the Altai, and then Shingen like has some passive also to combine with physical damage and lower physical resistances. I think it's class 4 because we could play some kind of Shingen physical support from Eula, even though you're gonna screw up Pyro and you're having a superconductor reaction, but a Mika Cula, an Electro as smooth that I have mentioned before official or Raiden herself and fuck their ass. Oila's 4th slot to turn the ulti off would be 2 of the strongest teams in the world today. I've made a lot of effort. There's nowhere to treat her. I'm sorry. In the comments no Phil because the team of Shingen can do mini already said a type of quiet carry. Rosaria already mentioned his 2 teams of permafrost specifically. Rosaria for the rotation of 15 can play the 15 Morgana both with Ganyu Kazuha, Mona Rosaria. Of the inverse melts of 2 Cryos dos Pyro that I mentioned in the video. The team of Bennett Diona Rosaria and Gaming Roofs of Rosaria quite powerful, besides concretely. Yamfei is a carry pyro that can vaporize your loads, but be careful with the amount of hydro. that you apply, because if you go with the Furina, for example, you won't be able to vaporize the load, because you still have to do 2 normals in the middle of the rotation. If you control and you understand the how. Team of Yamfei stamps, especially if it is chicks that can reach 4 stamps, but you have to make 2 normal and then 3 normal for the 4 seals on all loaded. This is a lot text, but the story is that it vaporizes well with Xingqiu basically, so Yamfei Xingqiu Furina C2 in. And Bennett, I recommend a lot of hydro consonants that gives us more life, and Yamfei has a shield that, and it can serve you and help you a lot because it's kind of like a turret. Has a lot of distance and variance of vaporized in general. We could play Yamfei, Xingqiu Kazu. Bennett that incidentally this team is also very important to me because this team, Yamfei was the one who gave me the first full star abyss in the free-to-play account, plus and 1. The other room carried a team of Rosaria, Mona Diona, and Yula. And Yamfei gave me my first state. 4 stars in the free-to-play account and are not the strongest teams in the game, so Yamfei vaporized mainly well natural core, vaporized with Xingqiu, with Kazuha Vent or Cho. Double Hydro with Xingqiu, Furina Bennett Soma is a pyro shield and has its Crepitar that with gaming forgiveness, with gaming with Quinnage for some burn more cracking equipment. And it's not bad if we put Soma, for example, instead of Xiangling on the team that I told you about. Bennett Soma Furina CT1 Quinnage, problem that has Soma that applies far less than Cloudite Figio and not Xiangling, and then the core is not exactly the same, but I already told you that within nothing of a month and little bit practically there will go Mavuika and you will play Bennett. Mavuika Furina Quinnage. Then, all this using Xiangling and Soma with Quinnage is going to end is just one thing. Temporary, and then as extra curiosity Soma is a great shield, and can be put for example without Scaramouche to be able to play Scaramouche Faruzan Soma Bennett and give it that pyro consonants together. Bennett to have more Sayu attack doesn't work for Jean and Xianyun do their job very well. But if anyone wants to play Sayu on some team, there are multi-reaction teams with it. Xiangling with some field around, and with Kaya, where with Sayu, you go around and Xiangling. They also do the things that they do, and because you have multi-reactions like least curious but poor Sayu, truth, I think of all the characters here, has been practically limited to exploration, and as a team as such with her making a Nemo. Hila does it pretty bad compared to other characters, and Doofa pretty little truth. But well, there is Sayu Goru. Goru is very easy, is a dedicated Geo support that makes 6 already. If you give us critical Geo with which you best and slotted the milestone team, and you can play some species. From triple ship Geo, also with Guru Chini Sailong and C2 Navia, and last a healer because there is Furina. It doesn't match because there's no here, and Guru cures the C4 very little, so here last with the triples. Geos should be as general healers that can be kooky is very good for this guy. Bennett equipment is not bad at all, but you lack more elemental application for crystallized. For the passive of Navia and etc. so Goro many combinations and the Geo block as well. Geos and Geo stables that you all know with Milestone and with Navia Sarah. Sarah the hyper carrier. Raiden is your best in slot and the highest team you can reach Sarah, and then as it is. An Electro buffer is the dedicated Electro support par excellence is the only one that exists today. Well, carries Electro, that is to say chlorine catching the Raiden itself with, but not because, but it is very much time in field and resorbs 6 seconds with what you want to do, a very fast nook for that. Combines very well with Raiden with catching in the first seconds with Chlorine pulling the ulting. Zozara, you know what's with her, is very simple, and her Haizu 1 punch team from which Faruzan Jixi, Furina C2 and Bennett have spoken a lot, and you have a 4 stars. He punches 500,000 or more and then an ulti of another 300-400. Maybe in A. Moment you dropped 1,000,000 and peak is a team plus rotation rather fast less by. Faruzan who has 20 seconds, but this could be changed to some song and some Jean C4 that I also don't know this 40% Bufo of low resistance and ammo with Jean C4, but basically the variants are all focused on that Haizu makes a very large number of his elementary ability, and is a Haizu. 1 punch is to say that Haizu Forzan Chicks Furina C2 and Bennett, and Furina Chero is also worth and will give, is a shield, and also applies enough inside us to be able to make reactions, or to be played. with its Hendro Noshia with another Hendro to apply, with which Kirara has 2 teams. Very much used to this day because it is not so important that I apply so much from inside like other characters, but if it suits us very well. The defensive contribution that are the blooms. That is to say, variants of equipment of neither the ultra-defensive playing Kirara nor the Nahida, and some Hydro that does apply quite well extra as a Kingchua Yellen, or you could even put some additional Jila like Kokomi staying in the field, with Kokomi giving basics to apply more Hydro. And it's like a hyper-defensive bloom, but it's played and it's interesting, and then the great teams, i.e. Agravite equipment where that minimal application of inside gives us for a little bitty time is enough for the character Electro in the field to do all its damage well by reacting. We could play Chlorinde, we could play Keiching, we could play those two practically, because then carries more than 15 seconds like Raiden 18 or 20 not. It's so good to play with Kirara Alloy fast with Alloy. I'm so sorry. Alloy is a Creo, with which can go well in reverse melts, but mainly can go well in permafrost, is to say, if you put on the permafrost supports that has spoken in other characters, that can be Fiorina, C2 Tixianion, and Shenhei. And you play all this around Alloy. Alloy. It's going to appear to rewind the abysses, and maybe it's ulti you get there 200-300,000 say. If Alloy, she was so hot mini, but the weird things you put up to play for her, but good there. Would be your best team currently then. Yang Ying is a curious case because the beautiful normal attacks is no longer occurring. And Yang Ying is not used, is the character who has stopped being used since it seemed curious its mechanics and tried to give some places together. To me and my Yae or Ayato in team's normal attacks, the reality is that buff are quite bad and quite limitedly, and well, if there's a bonus normal attack speed attacks with the sheiks, that this increases damage by giving more normal faster but little more really Yang Ying equipment. Interestingly, if there are 2 teams of Yang Yang that could be very high roofing, that are Arakino and Mualani, but Candace combines exaggeratedly better with them too, i.e. Yang Ying his 2. Ceilings would be playing with Alakino and Mualani to snort normal attacks, but Candace buffa as I say rather better to them 2 to Mualani for the consonants and Alakino for the combination of Hadar Hydro. So you can let vaporize from time to time. Candace here has literally crushed Yang Ying, but the 2 best Yang Ying teams are Alakino and Mualani, and you can replace it. Most characters can play Alakino Fiorina, C2 Yang Ying Bennett. You can play Alakino Yang Ying Katsuha Bennett. What you can't play is Alakino Fiorina Kazuha Yang Ying, because there you don't have Heater and Fiorina lowers your life, but you can trade Fiorina for Yelano without Q, and you could play Azo the Teen with Mualani, more of the same. You can play Mualani Fiorina mode healer Xiang Lin to be able to apply Pyro Vaporize, and last Yang Ying, and you would also have the best equipment. Yang Ying with Mualani and Alakino Kuki Shinobu. Here there's nothing to say, I don't think. You know Kuki is triple masters with master's weapon with master set Golden Dreams. And its 2 best teams are any variant of Hyper Bloom and Nouvelette Electro Charged. That is to say, Kuki is as strong as you already know, and there are plenty of words to know everything strong. That may become, we hope that tomorrow we'll schedule a Kuki 5 stars, and I'd actually love to have a Kuki 5-star school, as we've seen for Bloom teams. And for Agravite teams, even if you apply a character less inside the same, does your reaction well. If you combine it either with another inside, or you don't need that application for Aggraves with it, like Cabbage, and gets relegated to a kind of sub-DPS of Bloom equipment, and it's also not a bad sub-DPS applicator inside for Aggrave and Esprit equipment, but would recommend more to Kirara. Currently that to school. And because and it is true that it has 15 seconds of rotation, that is fast, but its application inside, if you really want to abuse it, is only 9 seconds, with which to apply little and have 15 seconds of rotation, you prefer a Kirara that also gives you a shield. And brings you something extra that doesn't bring you Cole and the team but Cole, and then the same thing as Kirara. But worse, Dori the same as Kuki, but worse in fact here I played it live because I did a very rough Dori DPS challenge, and as you see here in the field as Dori triple mastery with a core of Purina Nahida Baiju, for it seems that the wings are broken also, but good to see in the end is the Kipaloom damage that any character you put to it triple mastery and can explode the And Hyperloom's so curious and the wings are going down, so Dory has a team here of Hyperlumen already. I mean, an Electrogargados too, but worse than Cookie is the same as Cookie, but in worse Dory. Basically uncomfortable because the little ray that you make, that I know that joins the lamp, is light. Applied to make sure that it always hits the enemy or that it moves like to explode. All the Hyperlooms and curiosity of Dory to finish Dory, that laser, that ray that hooks. The character with the lamp, if you see, moderately decent with Quinish, but the disclaimer is that Quinish brings more performance to burn and crack, more burn equipment than no. They carry Electros as Dory, but hypothetically speaking some Quinish team with Dory no. Is that it's the best thing in the world, but it has minimal synergy because Quinish, when moving side by side, makes the Hilito that has Dory do explode the Hyperlooms that are around, and that hits the enemy more times and so on, but it's a curiosity Candace, the same as Yunjin, but better his too. Best teams, and if they are good teams who like to play Candace, are sub DPS of Mualani 4. The hydro consonants where we would have to play Candace to bucket Mualani Siangling Tin. Future Mavika to apply PI and Vaporize, and here last we could play Salonen. Play Kazuha even to put the elementary Yerbon on both elements. And then with Arlecchino. More of the same, we could play Arlecchino, Candace Kazuha Bennett Arlecchino Furin to Sidvo Candace. Bennett and you have hydro consonants to further buff rate both Candace's life and to make it more good damage from normal attack like Furina herself to do more damage outside the field, more loads faster and so on than Candace, Arlecchino and Mualani, and in fact with a synergy. Pretty good within what fits being a 4 stars that we were given bad, but not a T. It's so much and we're going to finish. We're already at the last, and well, this video wasn't at the end 2 hours, but will approach the previous 40 minutes. The Ila? The Ila is a cryo shield that has its 2 main functions, these same being cryo, and then be shield as shield being. One of the best shields of the game, surprisingly, if you carry it with weapons of life as a weapon that. It's called Sabadasina, which is now here on screen. 4 promotional stars is. Say this can't come out at any time or the coronation key of war with that weapon. In fact, we can get to climb a shield almost as strong as Zhongli, surprisingly, and in certain terms and conditions, the Ila may be the second best shield of the game next to the D. Zhongli's weird that it's so then you can play it as a shield, and that's its greatest potential. Actually, but if we talk about rotational damage, the permafrost again wins here, then play. 1 Ayaka Mona Kazuha Ila, and you see that I don't tell Furina, because since Ila doesn't cure Furina, then here is discarded, but we could also play a hyper-defensive in between quotes, playing Yaka or Ryazli, and then we can play Furina plus Xianyun that Xianyun compensates with the kill in I'm. Burdens of Furina and Ila as to play hyper-defensive, and would be these permafrost the best teams of the Ila. Honorific mention also to Scaramouche that in some cases it is lacking a shield with which the Ila Lighthouse Suzan 6 and Scaramouche Venet. Since the Ila also buffer the damage, normal and charged attacks not much and badly described in the constellation as. And it goes to the people but buffa inside what fits because the Ila gives us the team next to Scaramouche. That is also great, and also remember that if there is a cryo in the Scaramouche team wins 20. Very curious probability this Lighthouse Suzan support dedicated to Nemo Lighthouse Suzan does not have much more already. Yuno Xiao and Scaramouche Lighthouse Suzan Bennett. And lastly, as we have spoken, Justa. Now a shield or a Furina C2 if your hands are amazing. And on the other hand, Xiao's teams, Xiao Lighthouses and E6, and then you can combine Furina with Xianyun or Furina with Venet, or play a Venet, Xianyun and free Furina for another team, but basically Lighthouses and Shik Xiao and Scaramouche. Yayo Yao Heta. Inside basically sums up better than Kolai, something similar to Kirara I mean. Bloom teams and aggravate teams, and you will tell me Phil, and because Kirara, Kolai and Yao, not so much for Hyper Bloom, because for Hyper Bloom you will really already play a Tignari, like inside you will already play an Alhaitham, you're already going to play a Kinish. I'm seeing a lot of people play the Kinish Hyper Bloom because already I said that to Cone and Roan if it exceeds the roofs of conventional Hyper Blooms, although its best variant be Burn and Crack, and not only that, but you will play the best combinations of a carry Electro like Chlorine but Raiden. And you're going to put Nahida Furina Baiju and then everyone. The general Dendros stay moderately out of the Hyperblooms as long as they are not the Yo. Inside 5 stars tops of the game. Also entered Emily out there, that's why they inside. 4 stars like Yao, Kirara and Kole go more to Bloom and Aggravate. Other than that they do not apply. As well as to play pure Hyperbloom as can be done by Nahida or Emily then. or the Aitzio carries Dendro that are Alitham and Tignari, then these 4 stars are more suitable than that. For Hyper Bloom to play teams that bloom and a Grave Mika to see Mika has it complicated. Because Mika makes the physical dedicated support, and the 2 physical characters to this day that there are. It is Eula and Freminet that of Eula you already know. It is Eula, Raiden, Furina, and Mika, and that of Freminet. So then I could tell you how this captain with Mika Chinix is because there's speculation. Maybe it's a physical carry, and that's a bit of a joke because we don't have any information. But, well, yeah, you like very much Captain, leave in this video a good like and a Captain too. Algorithm commends to know who got here in the video, and who waits a lot for Captain, but Mika has her physical equipment, and she's fit enough. There's only one because he's a support. Dedicated is a dedicated carry of Bloom has its roof with the cave, or without it, and Nahida Amber. I recommend it quite is very curious and very funny this equipment, and is one of the ceilings. Realistic hype of the pure Bloom equipment. Even that roof is realistic, but it is a contribution. More risky defensive, because as you see goes Nahida Amber, you go without that, and then it fits heals a lot with the Blooms, but the rest of the team is not cured practically less by the Amber of Nahida, and a lot of collecting damage from the Bloom itself, and a lot of damage from the enemies with which it always wins. I told you that for most people I'm going to recommend conventional Bloom with a Kokonmi, a Barbara, a Yao Yao, a real strong defensive contribution for the Bloom teams, but who have hands and want to try one more thing, Dark Soul, to try this fit team because it is one of the real and absolute ceilings of it, the Bloom team, and then apart with fit as curiosity against a single enemy, you can make with fit a kind of small Alhaitham that. Obviously it is not as efficient as Alhaitham, but since playing fits Nahida, Furina, Kuki, and you build it to damage obviously like a little Alhaitham, and how you imbue it from inside, and has more or less decent climbs plus team boobies, as you will also see true. Destroying far beyond what you can imagine, Lynette is an Anemo that could reach her. Something similar to what I explained with Sucrose is to say that it is already somewhat opaque by pushes for Esianyun, but she buffers the team attack with which she eventually teams. They go with attack and require an Anemo that low resistances it suits you is to say that Arlecchino, Furina Lynette Bennett would be your current roof, and then as curiosity is good for permafrost, because Bufa the attack is to say an Ayaka Mona Lynette Shenhe would also be a team of the key. Inet Strong could be played permafrost and some extra variant of Lynette that will be Buffet the I can't think of any attack. I'd say these are the teams that Lynette really fits well and doesn't. Co-leads with Sucrose because the rest of the teams that if they go to reactions and take advantage much more of the mastery and don't blow off the attack because you'll say good but new billet with Lynette and the names. Besides Lynette, but Lynette buffa the attack. Then to put a Lynette with new billet, don't get in you. An Anemo and play a pure electro aggregates, or you put a Jean, or you put a Shanyun because Jean. It combines with Furina then Lynette in the end. I think Arlecchino is practically her best. Exponent Freminet, what I've already said about the Freminet physical equipment, is Freminet Raiden. Furina and Mika, no more Freminet variants, are purely physical and can be played Icebreaker. But with this team you already have Icebreaker because Freminet and Mika are Cryo and Furina is Hydro then. You already have the Icebreaker, so Freminet is from Eula's team basically Charlotte. Charlotte's a Cryo healer and you'll say Phil you're going to say it before the Cryo doesn't because Charlotte hears very well. Then Charlotte can enter Neuvillette's teams a permafrost. Charlotte Neuvillette is Charlotte's best team today and is the Neuvillette Fiorina Kazua, and Charlotte and you have an amazing team as well, and also with permafrost for that enemies. Do not bother Neuvillette Chebreuse and as second variant, the permafrost Chebreuse teams. General Overloads would recommend you to try one of the strongest and most fun, that would be the Raiden Yemiko, who is spectacularly powerful for overloads, and then, if Anglin and Chebreuse remember that 5.2, the overload reaction receives a buffer with which it will do more damage and improve the Na. Instead of Xiangling and 2 Electros Imagine, and as bonus track of overloads as any combination included with 4 stars e.g. a Xiangling Fischl Chebreuse, which is a 4 stars, and you could even test an Auroron that you look at non-active passive Auroron, because there's no Hydro already good, but it leaves you a lot of electroshocks that can come very well too. Then play a Beidou, and then play because Xiangling giving basics that you know has a constellation that by giving a certain amount of basics, it puts an explosion to the enemy that does harm. Pyro. If you didn't know, then something you learned new. So nothing Chabru's overloads gaming to watch. Gaming has its variant that you already know, and is the third best fucking team the game come on. For into Xianyun and Bennett, what happens that Xianyun has come once and has not had Reren, and more came along with Nahida, with what many people chose Nahida, and didn't throw for Xianyun then. Many people today don't have Xianyun. They don't know the true potential of the descending ones. She doesn't know how strong Ganyu's mother is and Shenhe's mother is. It's over. The streams and on the streams, if I could say anything else, but you know what happens to Xianyun, and you didn't know he was wearing a tie. No one knows that Xianyun wears a tie. You understand me? Taizo gaming. Fiorina C2 Xianyun CTO. If you Gun and Bennett third. Current best team of the game, in fact. And then the free-to-play variant of gaming already mentioned it. But here it's also very important as a subvariant and don't have Xianyun or one Fiorina. For another team, then the gaming Diona Rosaria Bennett. And here without constellations, even if you would. Very good to have Diona's chicks for the 200 mastery gaming a crazy and the latest characters. Had just like carry Electro and also using the mastery to turn it into attack damage. Loaded that with the ulti turns the normals into charged equipment of hyperblooms, i.e. the ceiling. Sethos Absolute is Sethos Fiorina Nahida Baiju, and as it is an Electro, and if you do the elementary at first, the rotation you can play Shilonen instead of Baiju, you put the Bufo and make a crystallization. Electro for the Bufo of Natlan's Parchment set Asethos, but Sethos has that absolute roof, and then it's how you also use that Electro Mastery because you can play in the Aggravate core. That is to say, Sethos Nahida Fischl and Shilonen, and is not a Hyperbloom's a pure Aggravate, but also Kachina. I'm so sorry for Kachina because she started more or less well for that we try NATLAN mechanics, but today is a worse Shilonen, and Shilonen is one of the best characters of the game, but Kachina go hit the micro Kachina currently. Its roof is Moalani. Casually also from NATLAN taking advantage of the passive of having NATLAN characters to activate. Burst Noctambulo out of the field for Moalani to do more damage with the ulti Xiangling. For the vaporized ones of Moalani and here last, you can put, for example, Fiorina Hila. Because you don't have Heater on the team in Kachina, we have this Moalani team that would be the Wai. Kachina's current, but if you notice it is Moalani's best in slot, changing to Xilonen. Kachina, but here we have Kachina activating Natlan's Horror set on Horror on is 4. Electro charged with what I'd say you might pull out or satiate the Electro loaded with pulling out. Or Sar or Rum without Ube and Du or Fischl instead of Baidu could be very interesting, but the team. Chaska's multi-reactions Horror on Fiorina Bennett. It is possible that until we have more horrified equipment on combining Electro charged more than reactions on that charged Electro that you can because Horror on is not closed like for example Chabru's, or that they are closed because surely in multi-reactions of Chaska we have the best in slot. Until we find more Horror teams on, and finally the Traveler Pyro no lies is 5.
Huh?
There are already stars that are all 4 stars and their current best teams 4. Take them to heaven. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I want to see how many people up to the app. I finally put, for example, Sitlali 4 stars for the algorithm in the comments to see who. Take it all the way. I hope that if you're eating, it has been very rich. The food is fun already. I know. He learned a lot from Gameshin with the video, and a little bit more welcome guests to the live shows. As I said, thank you for all the support. This do not forget to participate for the blessing that in the end, not only is it thanks that it costs nothing and that you already support very much in itself, but that on top of it, I have to return the support and the affection. And now I can touch you. Take care to have very good day. Chaito.